All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it another minute or so to give people a little bit of time to join the webinar and start to get settled in. As we're getting going, my name is Yenny. I am the founder and CEO here at Kaari Prehab, and we could not be more excited to be hosting this webinar with our colleagues at Osteoboost today. So it's going to be an info-packed session, but it is interactive as well, so we'll have lots of time for Q&A at the end. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And you are welcome to put your questions into the Q&A at any time throughout the session. We'll get to them as we get a little bit closer to the end of the session. We really love hosting these webinars too because they're a fantastic way for us to connect with our community and get to know all of you as well. So I want to also extend a really heartfelt thanks to all of you for taking some time out of your weekend to join us here and come hang out with us. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into our webinar content today. So you are joining Load, Respond, Renew, the Physiology of Mechanical Loading and Stronger Bones. We are very fortunate to have an incredible array of expertise on our speaker panel today. Dr. Pamela Peak is the Chief Medical Officer at Osteoboost. She is an expert in women's health, menopause, and longevity. She's a member of the National Menopause Foundation Medical Advisory Board and a trustee on the American College of Sports Medicine Foundation Board as well. We're also joined by Michaela Smith. She's the Osteoporosis Program Director at Kaari. She is a BoneFit accredited and NASM certified personal trainer, a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist, and a nutritional therapy practitioner specializing in bone density and menopause. And last but certainly not least, we're also joined by Karen Weinstein. She is a BoneFit accredited certified personal trainer, a yoga instructor at the ERYT 500 level, a Yoga Alliance continuing education provider, and a corrective exercise specialist. We're going to dive into this topic of mechanical loading for your bones. What is it? How does it work? What does it mean for our bone health? And how do we apply it? We'll look at that from the standpoint of exercise, evidence-based resistance, and impact training, like what we provide at Kaari. And then we'll get an inside scoop from Osteoboost as well, discussing how their vibration therapy device also delivers targeted mechanical loading to support bone health. And as I mentioned, we will have lots of time for audience Q&A. Please pop your questions into that Q&A at any time throughout the webinar, and we will do our best to answer as many of them as we can at the end. So getting right into it, the science of mechanical loading. Michaela, I'm hoping that you can start us off with just an overview of the basics. What is it that we are talking about when we talk about mechanical loading? You deal with this in your work every day. Can you just get us started on what it is we're talking about?
Absolutely. So mechanical loading is simply the act of putting a force or a good stress on the body in our case, the bones, in order to trigger a specific response or an adaptation. So even though the bones feel like they're an innate object, they're actually a living tissue in the body that responds to the forces that are placed on them. So we use mechanical loading through targeted exercises to apply a force to the bones that tells them that they need to get stronger and denser. In the case of osteoboost, they use vibration to create that mechanical loading for the bones. And then it's also really important to notice that there's a flip side to mechanical loading where a lack of stimulation is going to have the opposite result where there's no reason for the bones to get denser and stronger. So mechanical loading is really important to have the outcome that we're talking about today, which is stronger, denser bones.
Thank you so much. And I think it's always so useful to understand a little bit of the kind of science behind things. So, Dr. Peak, I'm hoping that you can give us now an overview of what is actually happening at the physiological cellular level in the bones. How is it affecting our bones and specifically their strength and their density?
When you do mechanical loading, we can feel it as we're lifting a weight or doing something that's really pushing and pulling there. You're really loading it. It feels fantastic. So what's going on is the bone in response is going to get thicker, stronger. And what's really wonderful here is to now take a little peek into the bone itself. Let's look at it at the cellular level. So you have osteocytes, and these osteocytes are mature osteoblasts. What are osteoblasts? Osteoblasts are bone building cells. They're the ones you want to be real good friends with. You want to be able to stimulate them and get them going because you want bone building as much as you can, optimizing it for your entire life. As you know, you hit that top maximal amount of bone mineral density sometime in your late 20s, early 30s. And then after that, you begin to decline in bone mineral density. And this will continue all the way through until you hit menopause, where it really takes a hit because of the very potent influence of estrogen. And then, boom, post menopause. During the entire time, exercise decreases the amount of bone mineral density, especially the mechanical loading type, throughout your entire life journey. And so at the cellular level, when we're doing this mechanical loading, what's happening is those osteoblasts are building, 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 building. You're stimulating them. They love the stress. Give them stress. And that stress is mechanical loading. At the same time, the other cell called the osteoclast is the one responsible for getting rid of damaged bone, for resorbing bone. So what you really want to do is kind of err on the side of building more than resorbing. And of course, when you're doing mechanical loading, you develop a beautiful balance between the two, which hopefully then equates to bone building. So you're triggering that remodeling, you're laying down more mineral, and the bone gets stronger. That's your little peek into the bone.
Thank you so much. I think it's such a useful visual to have to think about the certain one cell removing the bone and other cells building the bone, and then how we need to kind of fine tune that balance so that we can move the needle on bone density in the desired direction. So understanding the science is fantastic. We also obviously want to understand how to apply it in the real world, in real life, to generate these desired outcomes. Let's look at some really key concepts to help us unlock the bone benefits of mechanical loading. So the first one that I wanted to bring up is this concept of individualization in any exercise or fitness routine. We've all felt that kind of trepidation and intimidation at starting something new that you've never done before. And this is certainly exacerbated if you have low bone density. Things can feel extra scary. So it's absolutely critical that we customize and modify any exercise routine so that it really meets you where you're at and is safe and beneficial. Dr. Peak, I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about how this happens in real life, because you're a world-class athlete and you've no doubt had to customize your training many times over the course of your athletic career.
All right. I think that translates to I've been around for a while.
You're just a very seasoned athlete.
Yeah, that's another lovely way to say it. But so I've done all kinds of things. You will too, and you already are doing a lot of that over the course of your life. So here's a news flash for you. You're going to constantly change it up based upon the aging process, right? So by the time you hit 50, if you don't have at least one owie, you haven't lived. So, all of us have that. Is it a knee, a hip, an ankle, a back? What's going on with you one way or the other? So that's why modify, modify, modify is the way to go. And what I always say is never concentrate on like, oh, I can't do that anymore. I can't. And you can't do that. No, I say, all right, well, this is what I can do. And I'm going to show you how creative I can be with that. So it's very important to be able to always look at this in a can do way, very positive, and really wrap your head around the expectation that as you age, you're going to do that. So terribly important when you're looking at the life journey of all of this. Each decade, each year will present challenges. How are you going to meet them? Modify, modify, modify.
And you bring up such a good point. I mean, aside from the natural aging process, all of us deal with injuries at some point, and there are ways to modify around those as well so that you can continue staying active and staying fit. Um, Karen, I'm hoping you can talk us through this concept of progressive overload because the folks that you work with in your practice and at Kaari as well, they are likely not elite world-class athletes, and yet we do need to implement this concept of progressive overload in order to support these sustained long-term bone density gains. How do you help them accomplish this?
Yeah, we start really small, really slow. We often start just doing body weight exercises so that people can get their bearings in terms of body mechanics and things like that. And then even once we add weights, we're adding something nice and light, like a 3 or 5 pound dumbbell, with the intention that as the body adapts and gets used to holding that weight or bearing that weight, we can gradually increase. And it's important to understand too that progressive overload, we tend to think of just in terms of adding more weight, but we can handle that by adding in more sets or more repetitions or other variations of exercise or increasing the range of motion of a particular skill. It doesn't have to just be about increasing weight all the time. So what we're looking to do is we want to make sure we're gradually adding weight that is kind of greater than our regular daily activity. Also, you know, if you're already used to lifting the KitchenAid mixer or the bag of dog food, that kind of thing, we want to make sure those things start to feel easy over time instead of something that strains us and stresses us. And over time, we adapt, our muscles adapt, our bones adapt, our ligaments, our joints, all of our soft tissues get used to that progressive loading when it's done in a really intelligent way.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up. I think it's so important to understand that the process is flexible and that heaviness and challenge are completely subjective to your current level of capacity because I am sure that we've all seen things on social media and on the internet referencing the need to lift really heavy to stimulate bone density adaptations. And that is not the only route, which is really good because that's not accessible for many of us. So there are many other variables that you can tweak, like Karen was just saying. Thank you for sharing that. Now, another thing we really want to consider is this concept of variability, which Karen already alluded to by saying we can incorporate different exercises and different variations on exercises. Michaela, this is your bread and butter. This is your wheelhouse. So this variability is a prerequisite for those sustained bone mineral density improvements. How do we support people in maintaining and incorporating variability and novelty, even though we also know that routine and something that you're comfortable and habituated to is really comfortable? Like it's easy to keep going with that. So how do we mix it up sufficiently to get the outcomes that we want?
Definitely. And there is a place for routine as well because we need to repeat exercises enough times that we can actually improve and build strength in them. But we also want to keep the body guessing in a sense. So there's a little bit of threading the needle between those two ideas or those 2 points. So how we use that in our own Kaari exercise program is that we really utilize circuit workouts. So within the workout itself, there's a lot of variability. We're changing the exercise frequently. And we do a few different circuits within one day's workout so that, again, you're getting a lot of different types of stimulation in the workout alone. And then we kind of come back to that idea of progressive overload. Where can we add more variability? Where can we add more interest and challenge? So we add in new exercises, new variations. We play with twists on certain exercises to make them harder and more interesting. So there's a lot of different ways we can do that. And then one thing that I think I do as well is just seasonally. In the winter, I'm inside more. I tend to strength train more. In the summer, it's nice. I want to get outside. So my routine changes a little bit. I strength train a little bit less and I paddle and I run and I hike more. So there's variability built into the seasons as well. We can really utilize that.
Thanks so much for sharing those insights. I think this is a really crucial aspect of exercise and exercise for bone density specifically to understand. And Dr. Peak, I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this concept a little bit too, because you're a triathlete, which by definition makes you sort of a jack of all trades a little bit when it comes to exercise. What advice would you give to people on implementing variability into their own workout routines in a way that feels sustainable and maybe even fun?
Look, I got bored. All right. I was doing marathon running, climbing large mountains and having a good time, still doing it. But, it's like, ugh. So why not add more things? How about swimming? How about biking? And then I even added martial arts somewhere along the line, just because I really wanted to challenge myself. I know that my bones need stress. They're kind of yelling and screaming. Listen closely to your bones sometime. And they're saying, stress me, for crying out loud. And that's really what helps those osteoblasts build bone over time, because the body loves that. And so what I did was I sat down and I said, again, as I noted earlier, that over the course of a lifetime, experiment. It's an adventure. Someone says to, try something new. You've never done yoga before, you've never done Pilates before, you've never really used body weight, mechanical loading. Try it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You just fall on your little behind. So dust it off and stand up and keep going. I love it. It's life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. That's a Helen Keller quote that has become sort of my motto. I always raise my hand for that daring adventure. Why not? And most importantly, physiologically, your body craves diversity. Have you ever noticed that about nutrition? Those trillion friends with benefits down in your microbiome and your GI tract, they love diversity. How many times have you heard from nutrition experts, when they say, okay, it's a new season, look for the new colors, cruise through produce, get your hands off those big cartons and bags. Just go through produce and look at all the cool things you can experiment with, because those trillion friends with benefits, those beautiful bacteria and viruses and others that are your friends down in your gut, love it. So your body loves and craves diversity. Your muscles, joints, ligaments, and tendons are no different.
That's such a good take on this topic, and I really love that you brought up this concept of stress, which for most of us, that word has a very negative connotation. But when we're talking about tissue adaptation and the way that our tissues respond to being loaded and stressed, in the context of this like biomechanical realm, the stress is an incredibly good thing. It's what we want. Like Michaela was saying, we want to keep the tissues guessing, challenged. You want to do a workout and have your body think, oh, that was hard in a way that we are not used to. We need to lay down new, denser, stronger bony tissue to make sure we're prepared for next time she does this. We need to make our muscles bigger so that they are able to handle these stressors, these good stressors, and the load. And we really need to even adapt our nervous system so that we are able to coordinate the movement. So all of these really fantastic, excellent things are happening under the hood when you do something that's novel, different, challenging in a way that you haven't experienced before. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was perfect. Now, the stress being bad is one myth that we just dispelled, but let's talk a little bit more about other myths that may be keeping people from even getting started on an exercise routine that could be really beneficial from them. And I'm sure that we've all heard these in so many different places. Dr. Peak, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what myths do you hear all the time that should just be tossed out of the window versus what cautionary advice you also hear that actually is really sound and should be kept in mind when starting a new exercise routine?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing is, really, I think it's incredibly important to know what your current level of fitness is as you're beginning all of this. And quite frankly, even for you little people out there who are more intermediate and advanced, it's always good to stop for a second and kind of assess yourself. Hey, where am I right now? And so always try to have your current level of fitness assessed by a real professional, a fitness professional who's credentialed and can sit down and say, okay, this is where we are. Because, I don't want to break your heart here. Now, remember, I'm just the messenger. So many of us think we're a heck of a lot more fit than we are. All right, like, oh, I can do that. Really? All right, let's see ya. So this is why it's a good time to just authentically know what your starting point is, especially if you're a beginner. Now, this whole issue of bulking up, what a joke. I've been in athletics for decades, and most of us as women to pray to bulk up. We'd love to see some more muscles, and some of us are luckier than others, just genetically. We're born with bigger muscles. And so, no, you're not all going to immediately overnight look like Serena Williams. It's not happening. She has incredible genetics. Um, for that matter, what you'll do is you'll end up getting stronger, more toned. You will see in activities of daily living, suddenly you're just popping out of that chair. Whoa, what happened with that? And so, please, there's absolutely nothing behind you're going to bulk up. That doesn't happen. And then, please, you're going to hear from the Kaari team, who are just A plus, that you always do everything gradually and patiently, especially if you're a beginner. As you age, whether you're 60, 70, 80, or whatever, you always still want to be very careful about form. I know Karen is like a crazy person about form. You want to make certain that you're injury free. And that's how you do it. You pay attention patiently, gradually, and paying attention to your form. Do you lift weights like, some people start out and they say, well, I'm going to just lift like there's no tomorrow every single day of the week. No, you will be given a balanced program so that you have enough time for the next question or issue, and that is recovery. Recovery is so important. How many of you just, kind of, run through your session, just walk away? Like, wait, stop. What did you just do? Your poor little muscles, ligaments, and tendons are saying, can you just, be nice to me now that you've done this nice session? So can we do a little bit of recovery work? And I know that Karen is an absolute expert with recovery. For me, I hit the mat. I'll do bridges and I'll do some nice little gentle ab work. I love to incorporate some very simple yoga, and Karen's got that down to a fine science. So it's always important to just sort of cool down, allow yourself to, and then that recovery also means, hello, get some sleep. You need sleep. And the older you are, the more you need, especially if you're really beginning to lift weights now and do that mechanical loading. So honor recovery. And then finally, please, it's never too late. In the Senior Olympics, the average age of the Senior Olympian is 68. And in order to be part of the Senior Olympics, which I am, you have to be 50 and over. So 49, no, you're not getting in. So if you're 68, right, and that's the average age, you have no idea how many people began their athletic career at the age of 60, 70, and beyond. It's never too late. You're just going to do it a bit differently. And that's where we emphasize the gradual and the patient.
It's such an optimistic outlook. I really love this notion that you can start at any time. I started playing ice hockey in a men's league at age 39, and I just decided to do it, and now I'm doing it. And I think the notion that you truly can start at any time, it's never too late, is that is the mindset that we should all have. And I want to bring it back around to this recovery concept, because I feel like that is truly one of the most underutilized and overlooked aspects of athletic training. Agreed, Karen is a total expert on that, but I actually want to kick this one to Michaela, because her background as a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist gives her like really good insights on this topic as well. Michaela, maybe you can just briefly talk about what recovery looks like in practice, why do we do it, and what sort of boxes should we be looking to check when we're engaging in a recovery practice?
Yeah, so recovery is so important. So when you're actually exercising, you're placing a lot of stress on your body. You're creating little micro tears that input into the bone, in the muscle, that input into the bone that tells it that it needs to get stronger. but it's recovery where that strength gains happen. So that's when the little micro tears in the muscle repair. That's when the bone lays down those new cells, thanks to the osteoblasts we talked about. So that recovery time is actually when the fruit of your labor actually comes to bear. So we really want to make sure that we're prioritizing that recovery so that all of our hard effort is for something. So what does recovery actually look like, and what kind of boxes do we want to check? So a few different boxes here. So when we're thinking about recovery, we want to make sure that we're sleeping well, we're eating well, so we're providing enough rest time for the body to have that repair process. We're eating enough food, we're eating good foods that provide the building blocks to build the body back up and lay those tissues down. And then nervous system is a really important part of it as well. Exercise is wonderful. It's a stress on the body, a good stress, but nonetheless, it's a stress. So we just want to make sure that we bring that body back down to a more baseline, kind of regulated state after exercise, and then kind of intentional rest as well. So recovery after exercise, that can look like a lot of different things. That can be taking enough time just to bring your heart rate back down to a nice even pace. Karen really loves to just tell people really prioritize 2 to 3 minutes of breathing until you can feel like you find that nice lengthened exhale. You can also include some more like intentional practices like myofascial release, restorative yoga, really gentle stretching. So anything that makes you feel like you're dropping into a state of calm, relaxation, where you can actually heal and repair. So that's what you're really looking for when it comes from recovery.
That's perfect. It's another thing that's kind of subjective and should be customized to your needs.
Exactly, yeah.
So thank you all three of you for this excellent overview on mechanical loading. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit more now, and I'm going to hand it over to Karen, who is a senior coach at Kaari, delivering these osteospecific resistance and impact training programs that we have. And she's going to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what this mechanical loading looks like in the context of evidence-based exercise for osteoporosis.
Thanks, Danny. So at Kaari, everything that we do is evidence-based or research-based. And it's all specifically geared toward women who have osteoporosis or osteopenia, or even women who have a family history of that, and they're looking to do something preventatively for their bone health. Everything we do is designed by experts. That includes Michaela, who is our co-creator, along with Dr. Sarah Avery, who is our guiding physical therapist. And they first spearheaded this program in person. And of course, because of their location, they couldn't disseminate it to everyone. So they ended up taking it online. So it's accessible to everyone. It's digitally delivered, and you can do the entire exercise program itself in your own time because you're following along with recordings. However, at the same time, you're moving through the program with a cohort of other people who are in the same situation that you're in. And you're meeting with those folks in the first 5 weeks, every single week via Zoom. You can attend live, or you get to watch the recording if you can't actually make it live. But what we find is that the people who kind of come together in community, and when you get a diagnosis of osteoporosis, it can bring up a lot of fear and anxiety. And just that sense of kind of community support and being able to connect with other people who are in the same situation starts to kind of alleviate that sense of fear and anxiety, because now you know you're not alone in what you're doing. You also have the support of your coach as you go through. We have an intake process that includes a form. You get to talk with a member of the Kaari team before joining if you'd like. At our very first meeting, you have an assessment with Dr. Sarah Avery, who puts you through all of the movements that you are going to be doing in our programs so that you can make sure your joints and bones and muscles all feel good as you're moving. If anything doesn't feel right, that's where you get to talk to your coach, and we can customize your program to exactly meet your needs. And then you have interactive support with your coach on a daily basis through direct messaging in the app that we deliver the program through. And you can send videos back and forth with your coach, or it can just be written messages. And then finally, 80% of the people who submit DEXA scans to us to look at see an improvement in their next DEXA scan. And that's huge. That is no small feat. And that's usually due to the commitment that people have when they're actually going through our program. Thanks, Jenny. So how do we accomplish this at Kaari? There are a few things that we focus on. First, we focus on strength training. And whenever you're doing strength training for osteoporosis, it needs to be approached in a very specific way. We need to do exercises that include something called axial loading. Axial loading is a compressive force that is moving along the same line as gravity in our body. So if you think of the axis of our body being our spine, we want to have this kind of top-down loading. You'll notice that photo on the right side of the woman holding the dumbbell up above her head with the green lines coming down. Those green lines show the force of axial loading coming down the long bone of the arm, across the shoulder girdle, down the spine, across through the pelvic girdle, and then finally down the legs and into the floor. When we do strength training, we get mechanical loading in that way. We also get mechanical loading because the muscles are actually pulling and tugging on the bones to move them. And that's another mechanical stimulus that helps to lay down new bone. In addition to that, we do very beginner-friendly impact training, especially in the start of our program. And this gives us something called a bottom-up type of loading in a ground reaction force. Anytime even if we just lift our heels off the ground and let them fall back down, that falling down part where we hit the ground again actually sends a force up through the long bones of the body and all the way up. So what we're looking to do when we add that is we need to make sure that there's enough impact to add that beautiful stimulus that tells the bones to keep growing and becoming more dense. And then finally, we have yoga. Michaela talked about the importance of recovery time, and this is one of the reasons that we have yoga in our program. However, yoga also is really helpful for preventing falls because it improves balance, it improves coordination, it improves just our spatial awareness of where we are in space and where parts of our body are in space. It helps to bring more awareness to our posture and helps to improve our posture. And then, of course, yoga has that component of stress reduction. In our program, we have intentional rest days, and they often include breathing practices, meditation practices, or some kind of restorative yoga as well. So our program runs for 13 weeks online. Within the 13 weeks, the first week is your introductory week. And it is during that week that you are doing some movement assessments with your coach. You're learning all of the foundational movement patterns. You're sharing a video of yourself doing those movement patterns with your coach so that your coach can provide feedback on how to customize it to meet your needs. You're also doing 4 days of strength training once we get into phase 1 of the program. You're doing 1 day of yoga and you have a recovery day. So 6 days a week you're receiving programming from Kaari. And our program moves in phases. In the first phase, you're really just working on getting comfortable with all of the movement patterns. In the second phase, we start to focus on loading those movement patterns a little bit more heavily. And then in the third phase, we're working on actually slowing things down and working at a specific tempo because that helps to improve ligament and other tissues that support the muscles and the bones and the joints as well. And finally, you have that component of community support that I was mentioning before. A lot of the people who go through our program continue relationships with one another long after the program ends. And you always get that individualized and customized support from your coach the entire way through.
Thank you so much, Karen. I think I wanted to mention too that the individualized support is really one of the most consistently highly rated features that people really enjoy about the programming. Next, I want to hand it over to Dr. Peak. She's going to tell us about how Osteoboost vibration therapy device delivers this mechanical loading to the target areas in a very, very innovative and specific way. The floor is yours, Dr. Peak.
All right, next slide. All right, so what is Osteoboost, for crying out loud? This is the newest innovation technologically within the bone health field. We should also know we just got notification 2 weeks ago that Osteoboost was chosen by Time Magazine as one of the top inventions of 2025 within the field of health and wellness, and we're very, very honored. This will be manifested in the December issue of Time Magazine when it comes out, so you can have a little look at it, and you'll see us under health and wellness. So what is this already? It is the very first and only FDA cleared. Very important you know that. We went through a lot to get to this. The only FDA cleared prescription class 2 medical device that will treat low bone density. And this has been clinically proven through a 12-month study that was accompanying the FDA approval process, which took 12 months. Since there's nothing like it anywhere, we had, the bar was higher. And so we worked with the FDA for quite some time to be able to do that. We will be able to have insurance reimbursement since it's FDA cleared, but that will take place probably in another year. Right now, it's direct to consumer because so many people stormed us and said, we want it now. We can't wait for the insurance reimbursement because, we're circling the drain on, losing more bone. So there you have it. And we call it a precision targeted type of vibration therapy because we're targeting the hips and the vertebral column, the lumbar column, which of course are the two places all of us see on our DEXA. So when we're looking at our T-scores, that's where we're looking. And in this case, as you can see somewhat anatomically, the device is worn behind you, and it's right above your, how shall I say this nicely, crack. So it's right on top of your sacrum. You can feel that sort of tailbone there, and it's secured very tightly there, and then you're off and running. Turn it on, and there you go. It's very safe and effective. We've never had a single adverse event that was serious, nothing. So it really works quite nicely. Go for it. Next one. So what's the science behind vibration therapy? Vibration, now, many of you may not know this, but when you do any form of physical activity, if I ask you to get up right now, wherever you're sitting, or even if you're standing, just move around, then whenever you move your body, and this is the work we've studied with the American College of Sports Medicine, you actually vibrate. You vibrate throughout your entire body. Ask any runner. Yeah, we're vibrating all right. And that's wonderful because when you do physical activity and vibrate, you're stimulating, again, those bone building cells called the osteoblasts. And we love that. And then at the real deep cellular level, we actually genetically modify the expression of certain bone markers to be able to create new bone. How cool is that? And at the same time, you inhibit the resorption of bone done by those cells that I mentioned before called the osteoclasts. Now, where in the heck did all this come from? As many of us know by reading headlines, over the course of years, the NASA astronauts have gone up in space, and then it was one of those moments years ago when they discovered that when the astronauts came down, they'd lost a lot of bone mineral density. Why? There's no gravity. There's no pull on the bone. There's none of that mechanical loading on the bone. And so they started losing bone mineral density, male and female astronauts, very precipitously. Quickly, they developed a bone institute associated with NASA, and they were able to do studies on the astronauts, on humans, as well as the animals, and they were able to show the beneficial effects of vibration on bone health. Again, one of the things we've got to be targeting all the time are the hips and the spine because, these are extremely important anatomical areas at high risk for fracture. And then I mentioned before that Osteoboost had a 12-month clinical trial. And what was also interesting here, it's not so much that we were able to slow any bone mineral density loss, but we were also able to slow the loss of bone strength. Now, we as physicians can't measure bone strength, in the clinical setting out there in private practice land. We did this as a research piece, and we use CAT scanning to be able to look at the actual architecture of the bone. And what we were able to find was that bone strength was pretty much preserved when you were utilizing this targeted vibration therapy. And that's what, gave us sort of what we love to call our win-win. Next. So targeted mechanical loading is very, very important. I saw a question. I've been answering some of these questions as you've been putting them out there. Thank you for doing that. Somebody had mentioned the platforms that people stand on. The platforms that people stand on have never been FDA cleared, number one. Number two, they only affect the lower part of the leg. So they're affecting basically your tibia, fibula, basically from your knee on down and your feet. They may affect the femur somewhat, but the vibration energy dissipates. It dissipates by the time you hit the hips and the vertebral column. So what's the point? And this is one of the reasons why we went directly to targeted therapy, and the FDA approved this because we were able to show such significant difference and benefit once you had that targeted therapy right on the sacrum, spreading that vibration energy to the hips as well as to the lumbar spine. There are sensors that are built right into the medical device itself. And basically what happens is each person who's wearing this, like you see that picture there, is she's wearing it right on her sacrum there. It calibrates to your unique anatomy. You see, whatever size she is, or back and forth, you tighten it up, and then it literally reads you. This is why you can't share the medical device, because the medical device is calibrated to you. And so we want to really emphasize that in a big way. This is an individualized type of mechanical loading. And, the other thing that I mentioned before is, remember when I said that physical activity causes vibration? Well, especially for those people who may not be able to get the level of physical activity they can because of some level of physical disability. Maybe if it's short term, long term, whatever it may be, this mimics the effects and benefits of high intensity exercise over the course of 30 minutes. Now, what if you're already doing this fantastic Kaari program? What does the Osteoboost do? Not only, is it great if you have some off time for whatever reason, maybe you're ill, or you broke a leg, or, whatever happens, but it's additive, because the Kaari team and the Osteoboost team see using the Osteoboost as an integral element in a recipe for success. So what you're seeing is that if you're able to see some fantastic bone mineral density building going on with Kaari, then we add in an extra 2 to 3% of bone building from Osteoboost. The way I look at it is it's all additive. I actually utilize mine on a daily basis. We've proven through our study that the more often you use it throughout the week, the better the results. Let's go to the next slide. So what's to expect? You get a gentle vibration. Actually, it feels really good. It really feels like a massage for all intents and purposes. It's only 30 minutes a day. It shuts off after 30 minutes. Of course, you can divide that up into 10, 10, and 10. I mean, whatever you wish to do. but it's 30 minutes. I actually have my Osteoboost dangling off my elliptical machine in my home gym to always remind me. So what I do is I put it on, do my elliptical. You have to wear it while you're standing, or walking, doing activities of daily living, but you want to be standing. Well, number one, it's sitting on your sacrum, so you can't sit. And two, you want to be able to do the additive things. So you see these two women, they're walking along. Well, they're vibrating along all by their little lonesome, just walking. And now they're adding in the Osteoboost benefit as well. So you get a double bonus, a win-win.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pig. That was an excellent overview. And we've had a lot of new information come at us over the last little bit. So let's very briefly take it back to some really digestible basics and takeaways from our presentation. I love this concept that bone health effort is cumulative, because it really goes to show that it is not about doing everything to perfection 100% of the time. It's a process that you're chipping away at consistently over long periods of time. And we believe, as Dr. Peak said, that Osteoboost and Kaari together provide a really potent combination of both reducing the bone loss that is naturally occurring, as well as incorporating those bone building elements that we can implement with evidence-based exercise. In addition to, of course, increasing bone density, when we're using osteo-specific resistance and impact training, it has other really fantastic benefits, like better improved strength, mobility, addressing fracture risk variables like balance and posture and stress. And one of the things that our clients most frequently report is just a greater sense of ease and confidence in their daily tasks. And this whole time, you can be supplementing all of that with this passive, extremely pleasant and easy to implement mechanical loading from your Osteoboost device as well. So it really is about creating your own treatment menu. We talked about this concept of individualization, making sure that you're doing things that work for you, that are safe and beneficial. I cannot emphasize this enough. The ingredients that you pick for your menu, they should be evidence-based and firmly rooted in research for the recipe to actually be effective. And that's why we're so thrilled to be partnering on this webinar, because both of our methods really stand up to scrutiny when it comes to the research-backed and evidence-based aspect of things. So together, it's a very well-rounded, comprehensive strategy for bone density, reducing fracture risk, and promoting long-term independence and quality of life, which is exactly what we want. So we are going to head into our Q&A section right now. I'm going to let the team, the presenters, take that over right here. And while we're transitioning to the Q&A, one thing that I want to do is share a little poll, and I'm just going to pop that up onto your screen. It should just take about a minute to complete. We're extremely interested in knowing where you are seeking bone density solutions and what kinds of solutions you are seeking. So take the time to answer the poll. It doesn't take very long at all, and it allows all of us here to develop better strategies and services for you to manage your bone density. Let's head on over to the Q&A.
I've got it all queued up here
Yeah,
for you,
I see you
Jenny.
chomping at the bit there. Take it away.
Chomping, just chomping. I've been actually, I'm a woman, so I multitask. It's part of our chromosomes. It's like we can't help ourselves. It's like, can I do 3 more things while I'm doing this? So I've been answering, and I'd like to toss up to the Kaari team a couple quick things. Let's just do a no-brainer here. All right. Is it good for men too? We have Suzanne, who says, my husband's watching with me. Good for you. And they both have osteoporosis. So who wants to answer that one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that was the end of that one.
Yeah, no matter your gender, the bone building process is exactly the same. So we build bone, muscle, and other tissue in the body in the same exact manner. So yes, this is not just for women alone.
Excellent. And then, kind of coming off that one, so there are a number of questions about, if you're beginning strength training, you want to set expectations. about when you see improvement in bone density. So let's just say you take someone who's just a novice with strength training. So when can they actually see some change with bone density?
Michaela, why don't you tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. So your body's going to start to respond to the new loads right away, but in terms of when you'll see improvements on a DEXA scan, that's going to take a little bit longer because the sensitivity of the machine isn't sensitive enough to see those really early stages of bone changes. So most likely the earliest you're going to see a change on your DEXA scan is probably about a year. Most DEXA scans are taken 2 years apart, so that is a typical time span that we see between DEXAs. But we have seen improvements within about 1 year.
Absolutely excellent. Okay, who's going to take it with the rebounder? Now, there are rebounders out there. Now, of course, this is not like the big guy. There are simple, small, kind of mini rebounders that have handles so that you can kind of hold on while you're jumping around. What does the Kaari team think about adding in a rebounder?
Karen, I'm hoping you can tackle this one and maybe address the vibration plates at the same time.
Yeah. So in terms of rebounding is really great for helping with balance and proprioception. However, because you're on a surface that's absorbing some of the impact as you jump, it's not a go-to for building bones. So it has other benefits, and if it's something you enjoy, that's great. You can keep doing it, but just make sure you set your expectations in terms of whether or not that's actually building bone. And then the answer is very similar for vibration plates. So with vibration plates, because it's something that you're standing on, and we know the vibration dissipates as it moves through the body, you're really having the most stimulation down by the feet and the lower legs, and it's never really making it up to the part of the body that the Osteoboost device makes it to, which is the pelvis, the lumbar spine, the hips, because that's where most people are really needing to focus their effort when it comes to bone density.
Excellent. I'm going to answer some real no-brainer questions here. Very straightforward about the Osteoboost, just so I can kind of whip right through them. One, the Osteoboost, everyone out there who has specific questions, go to osteoboost.com. Just go to osteoboost.com. It's just a wealth of information, as well as other webinars we've done to be able to educate people, utilizing guest speakers like orthopedic surgeons and others. All right. So the Osteoboost requires a prescription. It is a class 2 medical device, so you have to have a prescription. However, if you don't have a physician who is going to write you a prescription for this, then all you have to do is go to osteoboost.com, and we have our own telehealth platform, and we'll take care of all of that for you. Otherwise, you could be the smarty pants in the room, and you could turn your own provider into someone who is very well educated about Osteoboost, and inform them that there's this new technology that you're interested in utilizing. We have thousands of providers now who've come to us and are now prescribing very actively. So we're just getting out there. We just started manufacturing this year, and so we're going as fast as we can because we only got the clearance, almost 2 years ago, year and a half. So be very calm. We don't have Osteoboost yet in Europe or Canada. There have been a number of questions. Right now, we're just trying to get the USA squared away. But soon, we'll kind of take it from there. Now, what type of technology is needed for the Kaari program online?
Great question. I'm happy to answer that. So it is delivered via a remote coaching platform called CoachRx. This is optimized for mobile device. So we recommend having, any type of Android or Apple phone or tablet. That's the easiest way to view your program and follow along with the videos. Lots of our clients do prefer the tablet just so the videos are a little bit larger. And then we have Zoom meetings throughout the program as well. And this is for you to connect with your coach, ask questions, receive movement demos, show them your movements to ask for feedback and any kind of modifications. And it's also a social component too. So we want you to be able to connect with your peers who are going through the program with you. So the meetings end up being not only very informative and providing a logistical overview and heads up about the next block of programming that's coming up, but also an opportunity to connect with your coach as well as your community. So it's really just Zoom and a device, a mobile device that you can download the CoachRx app on. And it is an industry standard remote coaching platform that most people find to be very, very intuitive and easy to use. And we do have a really robust onboarding process where we provide you with all the tech support that you need to get yourself set up. And I'll quickly answer another question from Trish here. How long has Kaari been around? We've been delivering our digital version of the program for about 4 years now. We have monthly cohort start dates. You can always see those on our website. And the great question about what does the word Kaari mean? So I'm originally from Finland, and Kaari is a Finnish word that means arc. So the visual of the arc is designed to represent our commitment to lifelong health and well span, not just lifespan, but actually feeling and moving well throughout that entire trajectory of your life, decade to decade, which as we've discussed so many times now already over the course of this call, this is something that you can do. You can feel good and move well in your body with confidence for as long as you are alive. And it also kind of symbolizes our comprehensive, like, umbrella approach to bone health and fracture risk reduction, because we've been talking a lot about bone density on this call, but bone density is just one fracture risk variable. We also want to make sure that you have good muscular strength, that you have good balance and good posture to minimize the risk of fall-related fractures and those compression fractures that come from a overly hunched posture. We talked a little bit about stress reduction. Excess cortisol can have a negative degrading effect on bone density. So that's where those recovery and nervous system downregulation practices really come into play. And we wanted to create something that addresses all of that. So you're not having to piecemeal it together from 5 different places on the internet that may or may not be evidence-based. And that's really the final point that I want to add, is that we do not have a single element in our program that didn't come from research that has shown it to be effective in some way for bone density or for fracture risk reduction. So we wanted to create something completely trustworthy that you can look at and know that you're getting the most effective thing. You're not wasting your time, your effort, or your money on something that maybe is just a gimmick or has like a really fancy, nice marketing campaign on Instagram.
All right, I'm going to, bundle a bunch of stuff here.
Yes, go for it.
And then I'm going to toss something very important to Karen. All right, so here's the deal. There have been a lot of questions about osteoporosis and the use of Osteoboost. Here's the way we as physicians deal with this. So the FDA clearance was for osteopenia. And as you know, osteoporosis begins, after about minus 2.5 on your T-score, whether it's your lumbar or your hip. And so what we do as physicians is we look at the FDA clearance, the claim, which is, treating low bone density. We already know that the same mechanism of action and benefit that works with osteopenia also works with osteoporosis for the obvious reasons. And so we as physicians, it's up to us to be able to make the determination that if you have some level of osteoporosis, then we will deem it appropriate to write a prescription for that. It's called off-label, and we do it all day long. And so it's a matter of you having a nice conversation with your provider. I've seen a number of people who've thrown out their T-scores, and I'm just saying that roughly about half the people who have the device have osteoporosis, and the other half have osteopenia. So you kind of see how this is working, in a big way. And then Karen, I really felt like a really important point was the whole issue of modify, modify, modify. So if you're starting out as a beginner, what does that actually look like? Can you help us? It looks like you're in your gym there. Maybe you can actually show us what's going on when you do your little modify, modify.
Karen, you're muted, I think, right now.
That's not very helpful. So I'm going to move my camera back and down just a little bit.
Oh, cool. So you're going to show us.
I am
Awesome.
going to show you, yes. So in our program, this is a typical progression that we might recommend for somebody who's just starting. And this is a way you can progress something like a squat. So we might start just with a body weight sit to stand. So I have my chair behind me. I'm going to bring my hands to my sternum. I'm going to lift my sternum up into my hands so that I have a nice long neutral spine. I'm going to keep my chest up and look forward as I come. And I can actually sit all the way down, get my feet planted, and then rise all the way back up. Or I could do something like just a little kiss of the butt to the chair and then come back up. So I like to start someone with a chair behind them because it just gives you a sense of safety and security when you're doing your squat. Once you're comfortable with this, we might add in load in the form of a weight. So I have a dumbbell here and I'm just holding it in the heels of my hands. Same thing, lifting my sternum into the weight, spine nice and long. And then I have the choice. I could sit and stand all the way back up, or I could just touch down and then rise up. And then finally, once I get really comfortable with this, I might move away from the chair entirely so that I can work on increasing my range of motion. Otherwise, the movement is the same. So I'm here, chest up, spine long and neutral, feet planted, and then I can just work on doing a free squat without anything behind me to support me.
Perfect answer. Thank you so much, Karen. And this kind of comes back to this notion of meeting you where you're at. So we chose one exercise to demonstrate what you would do at a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced level. And then, of course, the natural progression from there is to increase the load gradually so that your body continues to adapt to those higher loading levels. Maybe include some slightly different variations of that movement that make it more challenging or bias the muscles and joints in a slightly different position. So there are truly endless options for customization, which I think is the really beautiful thing. I wanted to address a question here from Sharon. She's been a trail runner, ultramarathon runner, hiker, half Ironman finisher for well over the last 10 years, in addition to doing strength training. And now I have osteoporosis. Seems like what I should be doing is the same as what I have been doing. So will this really work for me? Or maybe I have some underlying issue that might interfere with more exercises. I'm going to kick this one over to Michaela because she has a lot of insight into this. And I'll just start by saying that the exercise selection for improving bone density does need to be specific. So general weightlifting is usually not enough. Maybe Michaela, you can take it from here.
Yeah, definitely. So when we think about building bone, what we need to do is really look at what does that. And the two things that we know from research is that strength training and impact training are bone building on the body. So if you've been doing mostly endurance, body weight endurance exercises, so you're running, you're ultra running, you're hiking, all of that, you're really not adding that excess load onto the body or that extra load onto the body to build the bone. And even though you're getting that impact through the running, the body, like we said, it really craves variability. And I kind of liken this to if you have a car alarm going off in the background, eventually you just start to tune it out. Like your body is like, this is too much information. We're just going to tune it out. And that same thing happens. So you're getting the vibration initially on a run, but partway through that one run, your body's going to say, all right, I got used to this input and it's not going to create the same bone building effect, which is why we have a lot of endurance athletes come to us saying, I've been active my whole life. Why do I have osteoporosis? And it's the wrong input and not enough of the loading. So in your case, I think that we would need to look at what strength training exercises you have been doing. And if you've been getting that axial load that Karen mentioned in her part of the presentation, to make sure that we're really addressing the direction of loading that needs to happen for osteoporosis, and then being very site specific about how we're loading the parts of your body that have osteoporosis.
Get,
And then,
no,
oh,
go
in
ahead.
addition,
No,
I
go
was just
right
going to
ahead.
also say, there also might be some underlying things going on. You might want to, look at your thyroid, some other endocrine disorders, talk to your doctor. I can't make that diagnosis for you, but there could be other things happening in your body that might be leading you towards osteoporosis outside of just the loading. So definitely have a conversation with your doctor about that, but those are some things to consider.
The doctor that you're looking for is an endocrinologist. I would not just use your primary physician, because the endocrinologist knows the slate of blood testing that involves your parathyroid, and there's all kinds of things. Also, honor your genetics. Many people have strong history of osteoporosis genetically in the family. I know I do. And so, that's always going to be something there too. One other thing with the, when we're talking about a slate of blood tests and the rest of it, and just understanding how to be able to support your bone, there were several questions here about calcium and vitamin D. What's really important here, number one, is everyone in this webinar needs to request from their physician their vitamin D level. This is not something that is normally done. So you have to ask for it. Now, someone like an endocrinologist would do it right off the bat, but you have to ask for it. Why? Because vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium. You need both. And so, what is the level that you're looking at? You're looking at ideally anywhere between 50 to 60 nanograms per deciliter. So just remember at the very least, try to get around 50, anywhere 50 to 60. Don't go for anything less. Why am I saying this? Because a number of you said, well, how much vitamin D do I need? I don't know. What's your what's your blood level? So get your blood level, and you may be shocked. I'm going to tell you something, that the very first time I got my blood level just randomly a number of years ago, like quite a few, I just did it randomly, but long before it was cool to do. I found out my level was ridiculously low. And here I am, an outdoor athlete. What's going on? Turns out I have a little genetic thing going on with my vitamin D receptor. Many people do, as it turns out. And so this is why I had to, take a lot of vitamin D for quite some time to be able to bring myself up to snuff. So you won't know that unless you get that blood test, please. Then once you know the blood test, I would work with someone of Michaela's, level and expertise to be able to sit down and say, this is how much you need over the course of time. The grand majority of physicians may not know that, because the news flash is I'm a bit of a strange little unicorn, because I have actual formal training in nutrition and metabolism, which I did after my traditional training. And so I'll be able to have a discussion with you. Michaela has a phenomenal background. And so I would really opt for putting together that little recipe for success with someone of her background. With regard to calcium, a number of you said, hey, could I just get it from food? Sure, you could, but you have to know your calcium in the food, which means you got to read, and you have to get all your little homework done. So you're really looking for anywhere between 1,200 to 1,500 per day, right? That's the number you're looking for. But are you really getting it through all your food? You might want to, just fill in some gaps with some supplement. But you do need to get both the vitamin D and the calcium squared away.
That's such a good point. And of course, there's other variables at play as well. If you live in a more northernly geographical location, you're going to be getting less sunlight and less intense sunlight over the course of the day. And I believe that vitamin D supplementation is a very routine part for people who are training intensely athletically during the winter, specifically because we know that their recovery is going to be inhibited by the lower levels of vitamin D that they're naturally getting from sunlight exposure. There's a really good question here from Margaret, since we're talking about combining different bone health management modalities, about how can improvements be allocated to each of the menu options in the treatment plan, taking medications versus strength training versus Osteoboost. So this is a really good question. Because you're absolutely correct that when you throw the kitchen sink at it, the only thing you can attribute the outcome to is that particular combination of things. However, it's our view that given the sort of urgency and time-sensitive nature of effective bone density intervention after you've been diagnosed, Many of our clients are choosing to forego knowing exactly what did what and just doing the things that they know are going to be most effective in combination so they can get those outcomes as quickly as they possibly can. In terms of the combining, there was the follow-up question about, do we have actual attribution results from your clients? And the answer to that is yes. So we only obviously report results that we actually receive from our clients, and they are entirely self-reported voluntarily to us. And tying back to that previous question, the vast majority of our clients are either seeking to avoid or delay pharmaceutical treatments. So the vast majority of them are implementing a strength training routine only as their primary intervention. You can see all that on our website, and where somebody did use pharmaceuticals, that is clearly indicated as part of their testimonial and their results.
Lots of people been talking about, different anatomical replacements. And this includes knee and hip and all the rest of it. So I'm going to, kind of punt both ways. So for Osteoboost, the way we work it is that if you've had a replacement, you have to have the sign off of that surgeon saying you are now healed. All right. So if it's a vertebral column compression, for instance, a compression fracture, etc., hip fracture, knee fracture, you have to have your surgeon say it's completely healed. We are 100% ready to rock. Then you could use the Osteoboost. That's fine. I mean, you'd never use it just freshly post-op or anything like that. Now I'm going to punt it to Kaari, because when you have those little, challenges in life, when suddenly all of our anatomical parts are being replaced, how do you modify?
Yeah, I would
Karen.
say it's rare that we have someone coming into our program that doesn't have something that needs some kind of modification, whether it's low back pain, shoulder mobility limitation. We've had hip replacements, knee replacements. We've had people who are healing from compression fractures. So we're very, very adept at Kaari to dealing with that and really customizing the program, whether that's, inserting a different exercise for one that's in the program now or giving you a different variation on that program. We're really experts at working with this because this is the population that we deal with on a daily basis.
I'll add too that when it comes to joint replacements, targeted strengthening exercise is extremely good for joint replacements because you're creating better muscular support and stability for that new joint, which is absolutely critical, especially if the device that you've received has specific range of motion limitations. So you really want to be aware of that and build the muscular strength and stability to support that new joint. Strength training is also really fantastic for strengthening your connective tissue, which is the stuff that your ligaments and your tendons are made of. These are the other additional layer of support for your joints, and connective tissue responds to higher levels of loading only. You need that external load to really implement these stiff, thick, dense tendons, which is exactly what we want in our tendinous tissue. There was a really interesting question here from Selena saying, is there a DEXA T-score that you would that would suggest that only medication will work to improve? Maybe Michaela wants to tackle. I don't think that there's any instances where only medication would work. The mechanisms are the same.
Yeah, I'll answer, and then Pam, I think your eyes kind of lit up. So if there's anything you want to add on, please feel free. But I would say, as far as I know, there isn't any DEXA T score that would suggest that only medication will work. But what we might need to consider is the safety of certain exercises and how we introduce you to exercise, and then how quickly or slowly we load that exercise. In particular, my mind goes to impact training. So we would probably just really want to scale impact training to the very lightest load until you start to see improvements in that bone density and build tolerance to that new input. But I don't know if Pam has any insights to add to that as well.
When it comes to bone health and really trying to assess treatment, it's never just one thing. T-score is important, clearly. What else is going on, right? What's that nutrition? What's your baseline fitness? And so this is why you need to sit down with your A team. This includes your provider as well as the Kaari team, and just say, okay, where am I right now? You know, if you have a T-score of -4, does the world change overnight? No. Does it immediately ignite, 3 different drugs? Not necessarily. I've seen all kinds of variability here. So you can't just rely upon that one T score to be able to determine, the finality of whatever you're going to be doing with your strategy.
Yeah, like we mentioned, it really is about that fracture risk reduction overall. So we do want to have a really well-rounded approach to what we're taking for all of those reasons. Let's take a look to see. We have probably just a couple more minutes left. It's quite typical for us, unfortunately, to not be able to answer all of the questions just because you have such a wealth of interesting, insightful questions about this topic, which, as we know, is quite complex. Um, uh, let's talk a little bit about bone quality versus bone density, because I know this is something that Dr. Peak brought up as part of the clinical study that was conducted on the Osteoboost device. The bone quality, the internal microarchitecture and strength of the bone is obviously quite important, and it is kind of a different but not entirely separate variable from the bone density. People are asking also about the REMS scanning, the echo light scanning, and the TBS. So I see you shaking your head. These are pretty emergent technologies that are showing promise, but remain not the gold standard. And I think the kind of cautionary advice with these types of scans is that any scan that you get is only as good as the scan you got before it as the baseline to compare to. Dr. Peak, what would you add to that?
I actually had a REMS done. I was fascinated. I wanted to understand, I'm always open to a new adventure here. I'll tell you where sometimes it can really help. And that is something everyone here in the webinar needs to understand is that as you age, you pick up osteoarthritis in your spine, for instance, as well as your hips. But I'm really going to concentrate on the spine. Now, this makes the DEXA messy because what you're actually reading then as the ray comes right into the bone is you're reading through a bunch of extra bone, which is coming from the lipping of the osteoarthritis. So you may actually get a fictitiously better score that says, that you have a T-score of, -1.4 versus, maybe it was supposed to be -1.9. What REMS does is when you do it, it actually starts with your belly. So they run the ultrasound over your belly. And when they do that, they eliminate a lot of that extra side lipping. And in doing so, you actually get a more accurate reading. So I found that to be quite interesting because many of us who look at these T-scores all the time on the DEXAs are tearing our hair out when you could see on an X-ray that they have tremendous osteoarthritis. So it's going to make it very difficult to interpret. So I think sometimes REMS is good with that. The issue with REMS is it has not been integrated into medical practice. We don't have guidelines, and there's great variability depending upon who's actually doing it. Whereas if I go in for a DEXA, all of those techs have gone through standardized training, and I know that I'm getting the same DEXA as I'd get, at another place. But with REMS, no, it doesn't really work that way. And they really haven't, generated the level of evidence-based science that will pass the sniff test with the FDA. And so I'm waiting for that. I'm absolutely open to that. I think anything that helps us reduce radiation and anything that helps us augment, what we're actually interpreting now is great. I'm just still waiting.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's a very promising technology, like you mentioned, the higher level of sensitivity and its ability to disregard that extra calcification, which can really distort the scan. I think the device is more portable as well, so it can make it more accessible for certain individuals to get a scan. But like you said, we need to take everything with a grain of salt when it's a very new technology. To their credit, they are doing a lot of research on it, and of course, it has benefits for example, pregnant women who don't want to be exposed to radiation from a scan. So there's some positives, but for the time being, the DEXA does remain the gold standard. We've got just a couple of minutes left, and since we talked about arthritis. Karen, I'm hoping that you can just briefly discuss this as like a common limitation that we see in our clientele and how exercise specifically can actually be quite beneficial for arthritis.
Yeah. So, arthritis is tough because most folks who have arthritis have some level of discomfort with movement. And so it can feel like it's something that's going to be harmful, but you're not making arthritis worse by moving. And in fact, oftentimes you feel better with movement. There are bursa in your joints that actually release synovial fluids. So when you move your joints around, it actually helps to lubricate the joints. It makes movement feel a little bit better. People who have osteoarthritis tend to feel better after movement. So it's really just kind of moving through that initial zone of feeling a little uncomfortable. And then once you're into the movement, it feels better. But the other thing is arthritis is something that affects your joints, and the stronger the muscles around your joints are, the better job they can do of supporting your joints. And what we tend to see in our program is that people who come in with osteoarthritis tend to have a decrease in their pain level over the course of the 13 weeks.
Exercise is usually recommended for arthritis. That's a really nice thing about it. We're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna just remind everybody that we will be sending out a replay of this webinar to everybody that was registered, provided you opted in to receive further emails from us. We're legally not allowed to email you any kind of marketing type newsletter materials if you didn't opt in. If you're not sure if you opted in, but you would like to receive the replay, I'm going to put our executive assistant email address into the chat, here to help at kaariprehab.com. You can send us an email if you did not get the replay. If you're unsure if you got the replay, but you would like it, just send us an email to this email address so that we can send it to you that way. And I'd like to just close out by thanking all of you for choosing to spend some time with us on this Saturday afternoon. I would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Pamela Peak, Karen Weinstein, Michaela Smith. Do any of you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to leave as a parting note for our attendees today?
I think for me, it's just, Dr. Peak kind of alluded to this. It's not too late to start, and there is always a place for you to start. There's always an entry point, no matter what your baseline level of fitness is, no matter what your exercise history is. There is a way to enter this, and with the right support, you'll find your way.
Michaela, what do you think?
I mean, I can't say it any better than that. But really, it's just, I think that also there's something empowering too about taking this into your own hands and really learning how to move your body in a way that is safe and effective, and also reduces your fracture risk when you're lifting things in your day-to-day life. So we find that people who bring strength training into their routine, they not only see improvements in their bone density, their body composition, but also they start to move better in their life and they feel better in their life. And that is the most important thing for us, to see people feeling more confident, stronger, and really empowering themselves through a somewhat scary diagnosis.
I'm going to pile on that. And that is, we've been talking about bones and ligaments and tendons and muscles. And I'm going to talk about the mind. I've been lifting and I've been doing strength training for over 40 years. Feel free to look shocked. And so I can tell you right now that it does incredible things to your mind. And to your point, Michaela and Karen and Jenny, you feel so much stronger mentally, physically, even spiritually. You walk into a room, it's like, yeah, I'm strong, and the strong is all relative. I'm not asking some 75-year-old to feel as though she's, as strong as a 20-year-old. That's absurd. But she's going to feel strong relative to where she is in her life. And that means everything. And don't we all want to stay independent mentally and physically? Isn't that a goal and an outcome? So we're opening the door with bone, right? But as you go through that door, look at all the other benefits that are coming out of this. Your posture is much better. Posture check. I saw you, right? So your posture, you walk into a room, you're like a queen, right? You're strong. Your chest can hold you up. You got a strong core. And mentally, you feel like you could take things on. You're more resilient, both physically and mentally. Put it all together. It's really a beautiful gift to yourself to do all of this.
I can't think of a better, more optimistic and true note to end this on. I want to thank you all of you once again for joining us today and taking time to come talk with us and ask your questions. Thank you to the panelists, Dr. Peak, Karen, Michaela. So great to have you here. We are here to assist you with any other questions that come up along the way. Don't hesitate to shoot us an email or just hit reply on either one of our newsletters that you receive from us. And we're here to help you on your bone health journey. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a lovely rest of your weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.